Okay, so we're recording there now. All right, so this one is Introduction to Project Administration. I'll just talk about the streams in a moment, and we've just started recording. Our high-level agenda. Now, there's a lot to get through with project settings and board settings, or project administration and board administration. So we're not going to get through it all in this session, but if I go through at a high level and give you an overview of what's involved, I've given project administration access to the mock data boards. So you can go in there and have a play with the boards and try some of these things out for yourselves. And that'll be your homework for the session. And if you got any questions at all, we've got the Slack channel where you can, if you provide your email address, I can add you to that private Slack channel so you can discuss and ask me questions and things as well. And we can ask questions along the way. So I'm going to open up my chat window. And so I'll keep my chat window open here. And if you can just paste in, if you've got any questions along the way, if you can just paste them into the chat window. And then I'll endeavour to either answer them during the session or I can stay online after the meetup's finished. And they'll be included in this the recording as well. So if you have to go at the end of it, you can always come back to the recording for any post-meetup discussion that happens as well. All right, so we'll get straight into it. We're not going to worry about doing the polls and that sort of stuff this time. The polls have been very helpful and have given me a lot of insight into what people are looking for and where people are at and that sort of stuff. So it's been really good, but we've got a lot to get through. So we'll get straight into it. So the Meetup series streams, as we talked about last time, based on feedback from everybody and a sense of where everybody's up to, we've sort of got 4 streams that have emerged. So there's daily users, and they might be people who are brand new to Jira and Confluence, or they might be using functionality just day to day and consuming the data and the functionality out of Jira and Confluence rather than perhaps creating content or structure. The next one is power users. So we had this meetup last Thursday, Melbourne time, Wednesday night, US time. And power users are probably those people who've already had some experience with Jira and Confluence and want to do things like create queries and boards, dashboards, that sort of stuff, or macros in Confluence, and that would be the target of that group. This series that we're doing today is project administrators, and that's looking at configuring projects and boards in Jira, configuring spaces in Confluence. And then the next one that will run on Thursday this week, Australian time, or Wednesday, US time, is system administrators. So that'll be looking at system-wide configuration, not just projects, configuration of workflows, permission schemes, notification schemes, and things like that. As we go through project administration, you'll see some of these concepts for system administration there. As a project administrator, you can swap. If you wanted to change notification scheme, you can do that, but you can't create or configure one. As a system administrator, you can. So we'll go through creating those and in future sessions. Okay, any questions there so far? Nothing in the chat there, so it's all good. Okay. One key thing here is that I want you to ask questions along the way. We might either put them to the side and come back to them at the end, or we might address them as we go through. But if you've got questions, that's really what's going to help drive the content of these meetups, right? Not just for this stream, but for the other streams as well. And certainly if you might be a new to Jira user, but you're really interested in this type of stuff or system configuration, you're very welcome to attend any and all sessions, and you're welcome to attend multiple as well. Okay. So we've got several different projects in the Jira instance that you've got access to. These are weird project names, don't blame me, it's just mock data that I used from a data generator. And these ones, Ancient Circle, Ancient Furniture, Important Bird, Mobile Transmitter, and Witty Food, these projects, and there's links in the slide deck, so I'll share that later. But these projects, the user, meetup.user at integrityworks.com.au has got project administrator access to these projects. So you can go in here and play around with the things that, that we're going to go through today, and I really encourage you to do that. Okay. Any questions so far? Everybody's good? Cool. We'll come back to the homework in a minute, and I'm just going to pause my sharing for a minute while I just get the other screen ready. Okay. And I'm going to change the screen. Okay, so hopefully now you should all be able to see my Jira screen. Is that right? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Yep, cool. Okay, so when you are a project administrator or when you have access to it, down on the bottom left here, you can see project settings. For this project that we're looking at, if you're logged in as a Meetup user, you probably couldn't see that project settings button, but for any of the other ones that I've just mentioned, you can. If you come into this Jira project, so this is the Meetups project, on the left-hand side, I've added links in here to those projects that we just discussed. And if you click on those, it will open in a new tab. So there's the Ancient Circle one, Ancient Furniture, Important Bird, etc., etc. And when you're a project administrator, you can practice just adding in links and that sort of thing here too. So they'll open in a new tab, and then if you follow that, you'll see that project settings link down on the bottom left. So I want to go through project settings and also board settings. So project settings is down on the left-hand side here. Board settings is under the 3 dots in the top right-hand side, board settings. And if you open up one of these other ones, if we go to Important Bird, for example, which doesn't have a board, of course, there's no board settings over on the right-hand side. So one of your tasks of your homework would be to practice creating boards if you want to. And you could access that from the drop down here on the left-hand side, and down the bottom is Create Board. Okay. So this will be in the recording too. So if you want to play back what we're going through and presenting here now, you can play that back later and pause it and find the different places on the screen. Okay. So let's go into project settings. And I'll run through the different screens that we've got here. So running down the left-hand side, when you go into the project settings menu, the first one that comes up is details. This is where you can change the name of your Jira project if you want to. So there's a name for it. This one is Meetups. You can also change the key. When you change a Jira project key, it will re-index all of the work within, or the cards, tickets, items within that Jira project. So if I change that from Meet to Met, for example, then the IDs for all of the items in this backlog would go from Meet, for example, Meet-123 to Met-123. If you try to access one of those original IDs, Meet-123, it will automatically redirect back to the new ID. So if you've shared a link in emails previously or anything like that, don't worry, we'll automatically go to the new ID, which is really cool. Some of the other items in here, you could put a URL if you wanted to, so I could put the Integrity Works website in here. Project type is fixed once it's created, so this one is software. Project category, you can create categories. So I've got, for example, consulting external, consulting internal, employment, home, mock data, that sort of stuff. You can select an avatar or upload an avatar. If you wanted to, you can put a description of your project in there, just in a rich text editor. You can set the project lead for the project, and you can set a default assignee. So the default assignee could either be the project lead or unassigned. And that means every issue that gets created, if I set that default assignee to the project lead, being me, then every issue that gets created, whether it's a story, task, epic, whatever, would by default get assigned to the project lead. Okay, so a couple of questions here. So Linda, thank you. I'm interested in Jira Align and the Agile Craft. If you can't in this meetup, maybe in a future one. Yep, awesome. So plugins, I think we might cover plugins in system administrators sessions. And so I really want the members to nominate, just as you've done here, Linda, to nominate content and subjects for upcoming meetups. That'd be really good. Question from Nicole, what's the use of a key? So key, every item in Jira, and I'll just go to, let's go to Ancient Circle, for example. I'm just going to move my Zoom tools out of the window. Okay, so Ancient Circle, for example, see this letter over here, ANC 7. every issue in Jira, and remembering that an issue is not a problem, an issue is just any record in Jira, has a unique identifier. So that key, ANC in this case, composes part of the unique identifier for that record. So we've got ANC 7 is one item, ANC 10 is another item, for example. And if we're going to go to important bird, then the key for important bird is going to be an IMB prefix. So that's that 3-letter or series of letters. It doesn't have to be 3 letters, but that prefix is the key. Thanks, Sandeep. Yep, so Sandeep's answer there. It's used to create a unique identification for the backlog items. You can identify each item with its unique key. Yep, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay. All right, so let's get going there. So that was the details part that we just went through. The next section on the left here is people. And this is where you can add people in and you can specify the role that people have within that project. Okay, so as a system administrator, you can define project roles. For example, the roles that I've got set up, there's a couple of default ones. So there's developers, users, administrators. I've got a home users group. Project administrators is another out of the box one. So as a system administrator, you can create project roles. As a project administrator, you can associate people or groups with those roles. So we can see here, I've got an external users role. And in a system administration future series, I'll show you how to configure Jira and Confluence so that people can access, as you're doing here, people can access particular Jira projects, but perhaps not others. You might have a client that you want to be able to access a Jira project, but not other items or not other projects. And same for Confluence, you might want them to be able to access a particular space, but not the spaces of other clients, for example. And so with a role, you can either associate a Jira group. In this case, I've got external meetup is an external user, but they're not a project administrator in this one. But if I go to IMB, so this is another project, and we look at people here, then you can see that external meetup, that role, or sorry, that group, is both an administrator of the project and an external user of the project as well. Now you might ask the question, well, why have we got administrators and project administrators as project roles? I think there's some duplication there in Jira. But it's the permission scheme, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's the permission scheme that gives people the access to what they can actually do within a project. Okay. Ignacio, good question. What pool is available when adding people? So Ignacio, I might just get you to expand on that a little bit. It's either by pool, do you mean the name? So if we wanted to add, oh, okay. What can you select from? I think.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, that's what I meant.
No worries.
Thank you.
So you can either choose somebody's name. So I haven't got Ignacio in here as a user because they're already using the Meetup user, for example. I have got another one in here, which is demo user, for example. So I might give demo user an external user access in here. And so you get a little message down the bottom here, new people added, demo user added to the project. Okay, now we can see demo user listed in here. And so you can see that we've got a mixture here of users and groups, okay? And if you see the an avatar here, then that indicates a user as opposed to a group. And the structure is a bit different as well. And so from here, now that demo user is added, I could give demo user project administration access, and I can take away as well.
So, excuse me, Paul, what I was referring to is how do I know what is my available list? It just has a little dialog box that says enter name, email, but can I do a pick list or say tick, 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 tick?
I think it's only adding people one by one, but if I go, it's a really good question. So let me just remove demo user for a second. And if I go, I want to add demo user, and then I can also add Meetup user. So it's one by one. It's either individual users one by one, or you can add groups. And then you can choose, I think you can only choose one role for a start because it'll swap one or the other. If I go administrators or project administrators, right, it replaces. However, once they are added into a project, then you can select multiple others.
But what I was getting at is you
Yeah.
need to know, type ahead. You knew there was a demo user. You knew there was a meetup user.
Yes, yeah, very true.
There's not a directory that I can choose from.
There is, if I go to user management under system administration, so I'll do this in a future session.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, as a system administrator, then you've got full access to all the people who are available in your Jira instance. So I just had a question there from Sandeep. Paul, so basically you assign people and groups to roles. Yes, project roles, that's right. So while the roles are defined by the system administrators, yes, do the users and groups also needed to be added by the system administrator? Yeah, that's right. So creating users, registering users for Jira and Confluence would be a system administrator function, and then associating those people with the project is a project administrator role. The system administrator can also do it because generally they would have project administration access as well. But that's a really good call out, Sandeep. So the management of the users themselves and groups and all the rest of it, and project roles and permissions is a system administration function. And the association of people to a project and what the people or the roles that the people have within a project is a project administration function. So that's, yeah, really good call out, Sandeep. Okay. If anybody's got any other questions about the people side of things, please feel free to add it into the chat. This won't be the last time that we look at this either. Okay, so today is just an overview of project settings and board settings, but I'm sure we're going to revisit these in more depth in future sessions as well, based on what you would like to see. Okay, automation. Now, automation is something that's just been released not too long ago. I'm brand new to automation. I've seen a video on it, but it looks really, really cool. So there's lots of things that you can do with it, and perhaps I'll share the video that I watched with the group after. So let me just take a note of that. But it's basically point and click, and maybe we'll do this in the next project administration series. Point and click visual tool for being able to do all sorts of things. Anybody's used Bixby on their Android phone? I'm not an iPhone user, so I don't know anything about iPhones, but Bixby is a bit like that. You can say, given a certain situation, I want to do X, which is really awesome. So it could be that when I create an epic, I want to have 5 stories created, and those stories need to have user ID, the assignee set to the current user, and I want to copy that value to another field, and I want to move the status along or something like that. And I want to create a subtask for each of the stories. That's the level of stuff, and it's really, really powerful. It's another, used to be a plugin, I think, for Jira that Atlassian bought, and then they rolled into the standard suite. So it's really cool. So I'll go through automation in a future session. The summary, okay, this is where we start to get into some of the more complicated concepts for Jira administration. There's a fair bit to take in on the screen. I'll just see if I can use annotation here. Yep, cool, that works. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at here is issue types. You can, as a system administrator, you can create any issue type that you want to. So here we can see we've got bug, epic, story, subtask, task, etc. I've shown you in previous ones that I had other issue types like idea or Scrum Master or knowledge nugget, and different things like that. So you can create any issue type that makes sense to your business and the area that you're working in. And issue types, the association of an issue type with a project is managed via an issue type scheme. And we'll dive deeper into that in a future session. This is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. So move some boards around here. Okay, so Ignacio, really good question. How do you determine which issue types to use in your project? Most projects will start off with something like bug, epic, stories, subtasks, and tasks. A story represents something of value. A task represents something that needs to be done. So you might start a task, the summary line for a task with a verb, something you're going to do. An epic is a larger container of work, which will typically extend for more than a sprint. In Scaled Agile Framework, an epic is a much bigger item, which is something that's funded in its own right, for example. But in the rest of Agile, an epic is just a big story, essentially. And bugs could be any sort of a defect with your software. And sometimes people differentiate between bugs and defects as being two separate things. A defect might be something that's found through testing. A bug might be arising from an issue in production, for example. You might also have other issue types that you want to create given your needs. So it could be that you create issue types of risks, issues, assumptions, dependencies. You might have meeting action as an issue type, but you have that freedom to configure whatever issue types you like. So in Ignacio question there, how do you determine which issue types to use in your project? Is this the section to determine or choose the types that you will use? Certainly a project administrator and anybody in the team that's using a Jira project should be free to raise their needs. So it could be that as a team member, you need to create meeting actions. They might be separate to tasks, or it might be specific to meetings. So your Scrum Master, if you've got one, or your project manager, certainly whoever's doing the project administration, it would be good to discuss that. Could come out of a retrospective. And then either that person may be able to configure the issue types, or it might be escalated to a service desk or the system administrator for Jira for them to create the issue types. Just a word of warning, issue types can get out of control. So I've seen Jira projects before where there might have been like 20 or 30 issue types created, and then they had to be refined down because there were just way too many. I've been guilty of doing that myself. And if you rename an issue type, that's really quite dangerous because that will impact the entire instance. So if I had an issue type of knowledge nugget in my Jira project and I renamed that to idea, it's going to affect everybody in the entire organization. Pardon me. So with great responsibility comes, with great power comes great responsibility. Varun, one of the go-to issue types I created and used is artifact. Yeah, perfect. So there's, Ignacio's question might have been more, how do I know how to describe the sort of issue type that I need? And you can iterate on this a little bit as well with your team. You might create an issue type and go, actually, that doesn't quite describe it right. I need to change that. Again, word of caution with renaming issue types.
My question, Paul, sorry, was,
yeah.
I know what I want. How do I set it? How do I configure? Is this the area where I go to configure? I'm going to use bug, epic, story, tasks, nugget, knowledge, and that's
Got
it.
Okay, no worries. Yep. So as a project administrator, you can, let me just move my window out of the way. As a project administrator, you can change the issue type scheme that you want to use. So you might be able to swap from one issue type scheme to another, but the configuration of the issue type scheme is a system administrator function. So unless you've got system administration access, and so if you log in here as the Meetup user, for example, under this little gear icon up in the top right corner, you won't see the ability to configure system configuration around issues, for example. So you need to be a system administrator to be able to configure issue types, rename them, or to create new ones, or to associate issue types with this issue type scheme. But as a project administrator, you won't have that ability. Yeah. So really important to know who your system administrator is. It can be frustrating to know what's available in Jira and not have the power to do it. However, Ignacio, for example, in your case, if you work for an organization where you need to raise a service request to get Jira configuration done, going through this and seeing the configurations here will empower you to know what questions to ask. And you'll have this video to play back, and you can go, hey, system administrator, I want to create issue type X under my issue type scheme of Y. And that'll help them too, because you can describe what it is that you're actually looking for. Yeah, cool. Another question from Varun. Can we create issue type at the global level instead of just for a particular project? Yeah, I think now we've talked previously about next-gen projects. I'm not overly familiar with them. I don't know whether you can create issue types for next-gen projects. I don't think so. But generally in Jira, an issue type is global. And that's why if you rename bug to defect, for example, it's going to affect everybody in your entire Jira instance. So you need to be really careful with renaming. And so generally when you create an issue type, it's available globally. However, it won't be available to a project until it's associated with an issue type scheme. Okay.
Cool, thanks.
No worries. Okay, the next concept there is Jira workflows. And we can see here that we've got, similarly again, this word scheme keeps appearing, right? So there's an issue type scheme, there's a workflow scheme. And we can see here we are just using one workflow. So we've got a simplified workflow for the project JHT. On Thursday, when we're looking at system administration, workflows is one of the things that we'll start looking at, the creation of workflows and all the powerful stuff that you can do with workflows. There's a lot in that. Like most things in Jira, it can either be used fairly simply out of the box, or you can make things very, very sophisticated. I guess I was going to say complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated, but there's a lot of sophistication there. For example, if you want to set a particular value after you move from in progress to in review, you can set the assignee by default and different things like that. So it's very powerful. Scheme with workflows indicates that we can have more than one workflow associated for a project. And it could be, for bugs, we might have one particular workflow and it might have a testing status in it, for example, whereas tasks, we might have a different workflow that's just to do, in progress and done, and that's it. So workflows you can configure and have a workflow per issue type. So that's really powerful as well. And again, for today's session, there's a lot to cover. So I know we're not going in depth on a lot of these things, but it will give you food for thought and good food for questions coming up as well. Screens is our next one down here. And we can see here, we've got a screen, an issue type screen scheme. And again, similarly to workflows, that indicates to us that for bugs, we might have one type of screen that might appear. And I helped somebody yesterday create screens for risks, for example. So risks, you might have different fields that will appear compared with user stories, for example, because there might be fields that apply to risks that don't appear to or are not relevant to stories. So it's another powerful part. I'm just going to turn off my annotation for a minute so that I can scroll. Just turn it back on again. Okay. Oops, wrong annotation tool. Okay, let's try that again. Fields. So you can also have different fields associated with your project. And with a field configuration, you can make different fields mandatory, for example. So it could be that with this project, I might say that estimates are always mandatory. For another project, estimates might be optional. So field configuration schemes are very powerful. And we'll get into those in future settings, future sessions as well. And then the next bit down under there is settings. So configuring project links. So it could be application links between Jira and Confluence. To be honest, as a project administrator, I've never touched the settings part. So I'll have to have a dig into that and see what's involved. The fact that I've never touched it suggests that it's perhaps not highly needed. And I'll just turn off annotations for a second, scroll to the right. Okay, get the right annotation tool. Versions, you can see that you can't actually configure versions from in here, but it is one of the concepts to be aware of. And we talked about versions a bit in our beginning and power users sessions. Same thing for components. So components are a way to categorize your data, and it's usually a long-lived thing. And it could either be a technical component or it could be a functional component or a business type of unit. Something, whatever works for you or whatever you need to help identify your data and break it down into chunks. And you can use that then to query, make dashboards and all that sort of stuff. Roles, this is just what we saw on the project summary, or sorry, the details screen, which was the menu option over here on the left. So this is, again, I can't change it from here, but it's just saying the project lead is me. We've got no default assignee, and you can see the project roles under that people tab from here. Okay. And set up annotations for a second, we'll scroll down. Okay, the next bit here is permissions. And we'll have a look at a permission scheme in a minute. So for permissions, you can say for a particular project, who's allowed to do what, who can browse users, who can create issues, who can assign issues and that sort of stuff. So it's very, very powerful as well. And then we've got, and we'll look at those in a minute, notifications. One of the problems with Jira is because it's so powerful, quite often people get overwhelmed with notifications. They'll just get spam from all sorts of different areas. So you can adjust the notifications that you receive or that people in your project receive. For all of these, so issue type schemes, field configuration schemes, workflows, notifications, permissions, you can create specific ones per project if you wanted to, if your project has some bespoke functionality or bespoke requirements. It could be that you set up a range of different schemes across your organization. You might have different standards. So software development teams, for example, might have one set of permissions and notifications and things, and a marketing team, for example, or marketing department might have different sorts of permissions and notifications and workflows and things. So you can use a generalization or a specialization of all of these different schemes for whatever suits your organization. Quite often for me, I would take a copy of a notification scheme if I wanted to make something that's specific to the project that I'm working on or a team that I'm working with, and notification scheme as well. But it's good to be not, a bit like issues, if you create too many different sorts of schemes, then it becomes unwieldy and it's a bit of a system administrator nightmare. So it's just good to be careful with that. Creation of permission schemes and notification schemes is a system administration function. As a project administrator, you can select which permission scheme or notification scheme you want to use with your project. Question from Varun: any suggestions, best practices on how to set up permission scheme if you're working with external users like vendors? Really good question. I'll show you what I've prepared. And I've got a particular permission scheme for you guys and accessing this. So the things that you can do as external users. So that's good. And I'll turn off that. So
Thanks, well, I'm still also waiting on access to IntegrityWorks Jira instance.
So it's the Meetup user. So meetup.user is the one that I've been sharing with people. Just a quick recap on that. So I've got a Jira instance which has got a limit of 10 users on it. So if I gave everybody in the Meetup access to this, then it's going to cost me a bucket. If people wanted to have their own specific user set up, I can certainly do that, but I might just ask for a monthly donation or something. I think it's going to cost me about $14 per user, because I've got Jira Premium here, and Jira Premium has roadmaps in it. Okay. I've also set up another separate Jira instance which has got 10 free users in it. And so I think when my licensing changes, I'll need to change the Jira instance that we're using, so that I'm not paying too much. And I can also help you, Varun, if you want to. I can help you set up your own Jira instance for free. Same for anybody in the Meetup. So Atlassian has a free version now, which is up to 10 users. Really the only thing that's missing there is the roadmaps and Jira 24/7 support. There's community support available. But I think that would probably be enough for most of you to try out all this stuff that we're doing, with the exception of roadmaps or advanced roadmaps, sorry. So I can help you with that.
Thanks for that, Paul.
That's right.
Just a quick one as well, which I recently got to know, and it's a big gotcha, is with that free version, you only get 100 notifications per 12 hours. So.
Oh, really?
Yes. So just imagine Jira is so intensive on notification updates and whatnot. that
Yep.
100 goes off in less than 5 minutes if you've got those 10 users. So,
So there's a really good reason to modify your notification scheme right there.
correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I ended up doing that, and it's something that they do not clarify at all. Even with
Okay.
if you're doing a comparison in standard and premium, they don't mention it. And I raised that. I'm like, why is it not in
Yeah,
black
really
and
good
white?
question.
Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, that's there.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. That's a good pickup. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
really
So
good.
please set that up right away, because I didn't.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good call out. Okay, so a couple of questions there about roadmaps. Will you be covering the roadmaps plans tab that come with Jira Premium in one of the meetups? Yes, absolutely. I think I'll probably need to dedicate an entire meetup session to roadmaps because there's a fair bit in it. That'll be the same with a lot of the other system administration. So again, today's one is just an overview. But if we wanted to deep dive into permission schemes and notification schemes and that sort of thing, I can show you what's possible today. But as far as administering them, I think it's going to take some more time. Okay, so each of the different concepts that we're looking at, I think we'll need to have a dedicated session upcoming so that we can run through those. Yep, good call. Okay. All right, bottom right corner, we've got development tools. If you are using Bamboo, Jenkins, there's a range of different integration tools out there as well, then this is where you would configure and see the development tools that are integrated with your Jira instance. That's a whole separate conversation as well. Paul, maybe a poll could settle this, which topics to drill down in. Yeah, absolutely, Ignacio. Probably after this session, I might do another ideas board and I'll share it on LinkedIn in the meetup. Can I just have a quick thumbs up from people? Have you been getting the meetup notifications that I've been sending? So I've been sending messages to all meetup members. Yep. Awesome. Okay,
Yep.
cool. No worries. So that's working. So I'll use the 3 channels that I've been using for communicating, what's coming up and resources and things has been meetup messages, LinkedIn, and our Slack group as well. So I've just been posting information on the 3 different channels. Sorry if you're getting spam. I just want to make sure that people don't miss out on those resources. So I'll share an ideas board on upcoming topics. And I think we're getting to the point now where that'll be really important. So today's session and Thursday's session going through system administration, that will give people food for thought on what they'd really like to see next, and then we can vote on it. And we can probably, if you'd like to, capture it in our Jira backlog in the Meetup Jira project, and then people can vote on items. That might be one way that we can do it. Cool. All right, I've got 20 minutes left, so I'll go down the left-hand side. So the summary tab gives us that high-level view of all of the configuration in one place. So we can see the screen configuration, workflows, issue type scheme. The items further down to the left, so if we click on issue types here, then it's specifically referencing that issue type scheme. And we get more information here. So we can see again, we've got stories, bugs, epics, tasks, and subtasks. We can see which workflow they're associated with. So if we had a different workflow for bugs compared with stories, you can see those workflows listed here. We can see which field configuration scheme we've got associated as well. So again, like I was saying before, for risks, for example, we might have different mandatory fields as opposed to stories. Might have the estimate being mandatory for stories, and risk rating being mandatory for risks, for example. We can also see the screens that are associated. And we can see here, bug screen scheme. And we're thinking, well, why is that a scheme? Why is it not just a straightforward screen? And we have the ability in Jira, again, this is a system administration thing, and I'm a system administrator at the moment. So I get this option. We can associate different screens with different activities. So for a risk, for example, when we create a risk, we might want a subset of fields to appear, or for a story. When we edit a risk or a story, we might want different fields to appear. Again, it could be a limited view or a limited set of fields that we can actually edit. And when we view an issue on the screen, then we probably want to be able to see everything. But you can associate different screens with different issue operations. And they are our 3 different issue operations: creation, editing, and viewing. And with a workflow, you can also have a different screen appear yet again. So it could be that when you resolve an issue, when you go from in progress to done, and you get a resolution screen that pops up, that might just have an option to choose a resolution. And remembering that a resolution is like an outcome. It could be it's a duplicate, we've done it, we're not going to do this one. One of the other resolutions I had was meh, or loved it or hate it. So you can configure resolutions for whatever suits your organization. And you can also, via workflows, present a subset of resolutions. So it could be that for one project, you wanted to have one subset of resolutions available, and for another project, you might want to see different resolutions. So in system administration, we can go through that on how you can refine the resolutions that appear. Okay. Okay, question from Varun. Another gotcha. Read dashboards. Is it that you can't schedule reports, or can you, Paul? So dashboards are live data always. So you wouldn't schedule anything in a dashboard, but there is the ability, I think, under system administration to schedule jobs. So if you have a particular thing that you want to run, you can do that. Remember when we were talking in the last session about Jira filters, you can schedule a filter to run and email you at a particular time or multiple times. Whether or not it's got data in it, you can choose to return empty results or not too. So that's another way as well.
Yeah, but how do you capture onto that dashboard, right? That's for reporting. You don't want your execs to go through all bits and pieces onto that for particular ones. How do you present onto your dashboard? It doesn't have to be live, but yeah, you know, at a given time, say close of business Friday, if you want to just send out the stats, is another way to do it, if not schedule it, rather than just taking a snippet and putting that in a slide deck. Just trying to automate things, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So unfortunately, people do still need to do reporting in slide decks. It's just a fact of life. The ideal would be that people just go and self-service. You set up either a dashboard or a Confluence page where people can go and get data and they can self-service. So execs, they don't have to wait till the Friday afternoon. They can go in any time and get that data and self-serve. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, Varun, yes, people do still
always
need to
have time to actually go in and there. So if they land in the inbox, they at least view and can talk about and strategize and raise questions and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably a conversation for a whole separate meetup, is the value of status reports. But I'm not going to get into that right now.
Sure.
Let's just say that unfortunately people do still need to generate status reports. But yeah, that's another conversation.
No, that's why I said it's another one which I experienced, so I thought I'll share with the rest of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's probably ways around it. Usually I would set up a Confluence dashboard that I can export as a PDF. And that might have a combination of automated data, so through a series of Jira filters and gadgets, as well as narrative. So if you wanted to generate, this week we did blah, 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 then I would put that in a Confluence page, export it as a PDF and email that PDF on a Friday afternoon and say, hey, you can also access this data live anytime via this link. And then you can attach that.
Yeah, that's what I'm currently doing in my slide deck. There's a link, there's a URL to the link, to the dashboard. However, I still have to, take those snippets and put them on slide decks, which is
okay. Which is unfortunate, but it is
2020. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very true. Okay, so question from Ignacio. So in this example, when creating an issue, the screen that pops up is the Kanban bug screen. The Scrum bug screen, yes, that's right. So if I go and let's spend just a couple of minutes messing around with this. So if I go and create a task under meetups, so we've got summary, components, attachment, description, for example. And okay, so on here, we can see that I've gone to the default issue screen scheme. Don't worry if you get confused or lost with the navigation of this. takes me, sometimes I'll have to go and think, how do I get to these screens again? So there's a bit in it. So when we look at the screen scheme, we can see which screen is associated. And because I've got system configuration access, if I click on that screen, and here I've opened it in a new tab, we can see that we can configure the screen. So if I want to put labels above components, for example, and let's see, is there another field that I want to add? So if I said country, for example, I want to add country as a field, and I want to move that up below labels. Okay, I don't need to save the screen, it's already done. And I might add another tab here, and I'm going to call this Ignacio. And if I want to add in here, business domain, okay. Then when I come back to this screen and I hit create again, fingers crossed. Yeah, what have I chosen that's different here? Meetups, tasks. Let's see. So in meetups, and I've got Scrum issue type scheme, and for stories, I'm using that Scrum default screen. So let's see. Let's go to stories. It's going to make a liar out of me. I will play with this and see what I've done wrong.
So what I was asking, Paul, is
Yeah.
you had an example. You created an issue. It was the Scrum bug screen scheme, and you said on create you'll use the Kanban Scrum bug screen. And I was wanting to know. So when you set that, whenever you create an issue, that's the screen name that pops up, right? To populate.
Yes.
It's called the.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
So you can determine, you can play with each screen type in that configuration setting.
Yes, yeah, exactly right. Sorry, I've just figured it out now.
There it is.
Okay, so let's just run through this again. So stories are using a Scrum default screen scheme. Bugs are using the Scrum bug screen scheme. And so if I hit create here and I choose a story, you can see that the layout of the screen here changes. But if I choose bug, then I get that the layout. So country, so I can choose Singapore, etc. All the rest of those fields are still as they were before, and I've now got an Ignacio tab, and I can choose automotive. Yep. Cool.
And you just put that tab. You selected create a new tab, and that's how it popped. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really powerful, and it's when you know what you're doing. Like obviously, I forgot what I was doing, but when you know what you're doing, it's very powerful and it's very quick. So if you put in a system administration, say that again.
Can you realign those tabs? Like if you have to Ignacio
yeah. So if I want to move Ignacio forward, I'll just cancel this and try it again. Let's create a bug, and Ignacio is the first tab. And then the field tabs where everything else is. And if I go back to story, it reloads the layout. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, it's just it really helps, especially just going with the flow. You know, this is the first tab you need to put in through, which could be all mandatories, and the second one is you know, for a particular role, could be an administrator or whatnot, and the exec one as a sign off. So that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Issue layout is a relatively new area. When we're looking at a backlog, there's now a new UI. So the screens, the fields that you see on the right-hand side of the screen, that's controlled via edit layout. The other screens that we were talking about with configuring this screen, and I'm just going to get rid of that. Yes, I'm going to get rid of that tab. And under here, country, I'm going to remove that one. Okay. Yeah, the issue layout is a different UI, and that's different to the screen that you see when you create or edit all the workflow that the screen that gets popped up during a workflow. Workflows, this is where we would, you can add a workflow, we can switch the scheme that we're using, and we'll get into workflows in one of the system administration series. screens. There's more info here about the screen schemes that we're using, and it gives you a bit more visual view here for the Scrum bug screen scheme that we were just looking at. For bugs, for creating an issue, there's that Scrum bug screen that we were looking at before, and it's using the same screen when we're editing or viewing. And for all the rest here, it's using the Scrum default issue screen for stories, epics, tasks, subtasks. And we can see that under this issue type screen scheme that we're currently using, stories are our default. So when I hit that create button, stories what's going to come up by default. So question from Ignacio there, what's the difference between issue layout and a screen scheme? So if I go to issue layout, this is the new UI. So if I go to our board, let's see, meetups, and go to our backlog. If I click on one of these, this layout on the right-hand side here, or if I select the item, now is it this one? No, if I go to an active sprint, and I'll click on one from here, this screen that pops up, these are tied to the issue layout. So the look and feel here on the, the layout on the right-hand side, and the links that you get under here, that's the new UI from Jira. And the screens that we were looking at before is if we create an item, then it's a different UI that appears. So this screen that appears here is controlled via the screens that we were looking at before, as opposed to issue layout. So the issue layout is that right-hand side when you're looking at the backlog, or the pop-up screen when you're looking at an active sprint. Yep, good question. Okay. Fields, this gives a summarization of the field configuration scheme that we're using. And you can see here this is shared by 20 projects. So I'd want to be careful if I was going to change this field configuration scheme, I'd be better off to take a copy of it and modify it if I was going to do that. And this tells you for the fields, so for example, action item plan, it's shown on 2 screens. The effects version field is shown on 21 screens, for example. So there's lots and lots of information there. Versions, so we can see here, these are the 2 versions that we'd set up before. Again, Jira is quite confusing. In some cases, it's calling this versions. In other cases, it's calling it releases. I think I should just stick to one thing or the other instead of inconsistent terminology. Components is on the left-hand side here as well. These are the components that we had set up before. Then we've got permission schemes. And I'll give a really quick overview of this. I think we'll need to deep dive in this in a future session. But the structure of a permission scheme, and you can browse these, right? If you log into Jira and you using that meetup.user ID, and you look at not Angry Birds, Important Birds, or whatever it's called, one of those mock projects, and you go into project settings and you go down to permissions, you can see the permissions that are available down here. So we can say who can administer projects, right? We can say who can browse projects, who can manage sprints, so who can start a sprint, complete a sprint, who can view the development tools, so Jenkins and other integration tools like that, who can view read-only workflows. For clients, you might want to keep your workflow hidden, for example. Who can be an assignable user, who can assign issues, who can close issues, who can create issues, delete, edit, etc., who can link issues, who can modify the reporter, who can move issues between one project and another or between different issue types, who can resolve issues, who can schedule them, so who can add an item to a sprint or change its ranking in the backlog, who can set issue security. And issue security is a very underused and very powerful concept in Jira. So even within a shared project like this, we could change the visibility of an issue depending on its status even. So it could be that when something is in review, my client can no longer see it because it's for internal review and we've got comments on it, if you'd want to do that, I don't know. You can say who can transition issues and watchers, voters, etc. So have a look through there as part of your homework and ask me any questions that you want to ask, or we can put it on the Slack channel if you want to discuss. Issue security we just touched on before, so we can say what scheme we're using, if any. Notifications is another one. So another important one. So you can say who receives notifications upon what event, and you can also create new events as well. So you can say when an issue is created, for example, who do you want to get notifications on it? When it's updated, it's signed, resolved. And this would be one of those places that you would want to go to look if you're getting too many notifications to tone this down a bit and reduce the notifications. Because if people are getting a notification on every event, then it's of no value whatsoever, because they're just going to set up a rule in their Outlook. Oh, no problem, Ignacio. Thank you. All right, so we've got 2 minutes left. We got a fair way through this. We didn't get to board settings yet, so I might cover board settings in the next one. But please feel free to stay on the line. I'm going to do some questions with Nikhil. He had some questions that we'd like to go through, and any questions that are discussed after the meetup is finished, I'll keep recording, and so they'll be there for you. If you need to dash now, then you can see what's the questions being answered. Okay, so Madhavi, have you got some time to stick around? Have you got any questions that you wanted to ask?
Not at this point, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so if anybody's got any other questions that they wanted to ask, please feel free to ask them now. No worries, Varun. Okay, thanks, Kudzi. Awesome. Okay. Nikhil, did you want to go through your questions now?
Yeah, well, I was going to go through that, so I was just waiting for others to finish.
Yeah, no problem. That's all right. So we could go ahead now if you'd like to.
Yeah, so my questions were related to the actually board settings and the issue card page settings. So yeah, so I was practicing with one of the projects which was in Ancient Circle.
Okay, so let's jump into Ancient
And
Circle
I created a board and started a sprint.
Good work. That's awesome. And so you've been playing around with the card colors, I can see.
Yeah, so I was just going through all the fields in the board settings.
Yeah.
And just sort of like trying something out, like giving a color or 1 second, I'll start my video. Sorry.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Ella.
So my first question was, I created a column and it said that this column won't be displayed, like, yeah, the testing in progress. If you see the third column.
Yeah.
So it says this column will not be shown on the board without a status. So what is that, like where it will not be shown, and how can I add a status and the min max columns to it?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So, okay. With this imported data, it also brought in its own workflow.
Okay.
And so that's why we can't add a status here. There's an option here. I don't want to mess with it in this one, but there's an option to simplify the workflow, and then you would have the ability to add statuses, for example. So if we added a status, that's when you could set the min and max. If we, maybe what I need to do, let's create a new project. We're going to go with the classic project. And let's call this meetup homework, if I can type properly. Okay, so we'll just call that MH. We're going to share its settings with meetups. Okay, so therefore by default it will be a Scrum board and it'll have that simplified workflow and things. And in here, so I'm going to configure this one. And permission scheme, I'm going to use, oh no, external permission scheme. Yep, so it's copied across all the right things. Are you logged in now as Meetup user?
Yeah, I've logged in as a Meetup
Yeah,
user.
cool. Do you want to see if you can access this project? Share the link there. And can you access that link?
Okay. Under the projects list, I don't see it, but I will just go through the link that you have provided.
Yeah. We made up homework, create that board.
Okay, it says we couldn't get the list of issues, so I think so.
Yep. So I've just created a board here now. So you probably would have needed to click the back button. Here's a link to the board that I've just put in the chat there. Did that one come up for you, the board?
It says the project isn't available. So
Okay. All right. Let me look into project settings. I thought it would have copied across all the.
no, in the
roles
list
and
of projects, I don't see that project.
Ah,
so probably
okay. All right. So it didn't copy across the external.
permissions, I think so.
I think it was external user, wasn't it? I had for
External meetup user or external user, I think so. Yeah.
group. Let me see. Project settings. People. So in here I had external meetup, sorry. So instead of external user, we go external meetup. External meetup. And we're going to use developers for a start. And then so this is our meetup homework project. So I'm going to make external meetup administrator as well.
So basically, developer permission is the basic level of permission where people can see the cards or just navigate through the Jira board, something like that.
Yeah. So the developer will have slightly higher permissions. And again, this is all configurable via the permission scheme, but the out-of-the-box permission scheme for developers will have the ability to perhaps schedule issues and assign users and things like that, whereas the basic user might not have some of those abilities. Yeah. An administrator, you'll have the ability to delete comments, for example, and that sort of thing. But that's all configurable in the permission scheme.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go through that in one of the future meetups. So now, if you try and access this board, you should be able to access it.
Yeah, I can see the meetup project now, and I'm on active screen, backlog. Yeah, like I went to backlog. Yeah.
And that's the meetup homework board you're looking at, right? Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Yep, awesome. Okay, so now if we go to board settings and we go to columns, okay. Let's simplify the workflow. We'll make it manageable Jira software. Yep, for meetup homework only. Okay, so this is not going to break my workflow for the meetups project. It'll just change it for meetup homework. So it's going to change the workflow to a simplified workflow. And it will allow free movement of issues between any column. So it's instead of directing the workflow from one specific status to another, it'll be a free for all. So I can move anything from done to in progress, and I can move from progress to anywhere. So it's quite open or unrestricted that way, which could be a good thing. But sometimes being able to move from any status to any status is a bit dangerous too, because it doesn't enforce a sequence. Okay, so we'll go next. Choose the status as done. Yep, we're just going to go with done. Workflow migration is complete. Okay. So now, if what was your column that you were adding before?
Yeah, like testing in progress, like one of the middle layers.
Yeah, cool. So if we go in testing, we've got no status there at the moment, and you'll get this message. This column will not show on the board without a status. Okay.
Yeah.
If I add a status.
Okay.
In testing.
So you get that new button add status along with the add column if you create a
Yeah.
simplified workflow, because I don't see the add status call a button right now.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, no, like in the current one.
Can you refresh your screen?
I'm not like saying for this project, for the previous ancient circle that I created.
Yeah. Oh, but I haven't changed the workflow for Ancient Circle, but for Meetup Homework I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So if you go to Meetup Homework, can you see, and you go to board settings?
yeah, I can see the add status here.
Cool. Yeah, no, awesome. So when we don't have a status mapped to a column, we still get that message, but if we click and drag it across,
Okay.
then I might need to refresh the screen because it's not drawing properly. Okay, then we've got it. So now if we go to our active sprint, for example, we don't have a sprint active at the moment, but we can see the
Okay,
column is there.
testing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Cool.
Okay.
Great. So basically the swim lanes and the columns are the same basically. You're just going to
No. So swim lanes are running across the screen and your columns are vertical. Okay. So let's go back to meetups. If we go to our active sprint in here, so our columns are to do, in progress, and done. So we're just back in the original meetups Scrum board now.
yes.
Our swim lanes here, at the moment, I think we've got these configured via version. So we've got meetups, we've got a swim lane here running across the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. And then slide prep is another swim lane. And if we go into our board settings and we go, so columns, we've just got to do, in progress, and done. Again, this is the original meetups Scrum board, not the meetups homework that we've just created.
Yeah.
Yep. Under swim lanes here, we've got swim lanes by the JQL query. So base swim lanes on, and so we can choose queries, stories, signees, epics, projects, or no swim lanes at all.
Okay, because I was misunderstanding something. So basically what I thought, like the in progress, done, ready, and all those things those are called the swim lanes, and the vertical ones or the horizontal ones are just the columns. Yeah.
The vertical ones are our columns, which map to statuses.
Yeah.
And the horizontal ones are our swim lanes, which is what we're looking at here now.
Yeah, because I was confused. Like in one of the previous projects, they said that the vertical ones are the swim lanes, and
okay.
Yeah, so I was confused. Like, what is where columns are used, and what is the difference between swim lanes and columns? So basically, swim lanes are the layout how you want to show the active sprints card.
Yeah, that's right. So swim lanes are primarily used for grouping your data during a stand-up.
Exactly.
So when you're doing a stand-up, if you wanted to run person by person, regardless of what epic they're working on or which version they're focusing on, then you would do it that way. If you wanted instead to focus your stand-up on a sprint goal, which could be an epic or a version, then you would go have your swim lanes configured that way.
Exactly. Yeah. I got it. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
Yeah, Paul, I just wanted to ask, like, if you have a meeting or something, just let me know, because I have a few questions, because I was trying few things. So
yeah, no worries.
If you have a meeting, just let me know. I can do it afterwards at your convenience. Otherwise, we can go through it, like, if you're fine with that.
Yeah, you can keep going. I haven't got anything booked in for this afternoon, so I'll just take a note. I'm going to copy the chat here. Okay, so I'll leave it. Okay. Yep, no worries.
So my next question was related to the issue detail view under board settings.
Okay, so board settings.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, if you can go to that ancient circle project, so that will help you to.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because I have added a few fields and I was not able to see that on the issue page if I'm referring the same page, same screen. So board settings and issue detail view, the last one.
Okay.
So what I did, I added general, like under general fields, I added action item plan, like at the top, action item plan, and and then I under date fields, I added a due date.
Yep.
and then under people, I added votes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the three fields that I've added.
Okay.
So this should be reflected on the issue page. Like when I go to active sprints and if I click on any car, it should display on the right side of
You
that
should see
page,
it
right?
there. Yeah. So let's see. So I go to active sprints and I click on one of these.
Yeah. So here I was seeing all those things that I haven't configured also. So am I missing something to see? I'm seeing a wrong page or something like that.
So you added due date, didn't you?
Yeah, I did due date.
So due dates is visible there. And what was the
Yeah.
other one?
Action item and votes I've added. Action item plan.
So votes might appear elsewhere. That's interesting. So action item plan. So this bit, let's see if we configure here. Do we get different view? Same, it is a different view. Okay, so okay, and this is I think their new UI configuration is confusing
Okay.
because there are fields available. If I go to under this project settings, the thing that's a bit confusing here is that you can add fields that are not necessarily available to the project via the configuration scheme. So this is a bit confusing. I think I'd need to. So some fields may be hidden depending upon the field configuration scheme used for the project's issues. Some fields may be uneditable to make the field editable, so it must be added to the edit issue screen. So you remember back earlier in the meetup, we were saying when you create, when you edit, when you view, they're the different fields, different screens that are available for different actions. So I think it's going to be the constraint of the field configuration scheme. So if we go here and let's go to project settings. And if I look at the field configuration scheme, so if we go summary and our field configuration scheme that we're looking at is a system default and it's a default field configuration. So if I open that in a new one and action item plan. Okay, so action item plan, I've only got it available on a couple of screens, but not others. So
Okay.
if we, now let's see. So our screens, so we're using the default screen scheme.
What is the default issue screen?
So I know this gets a bit confusing, right? Because we're sort of diving around all over the place. So if we just take a step back, so under Agent Circle, which is the project,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the issue type screen scheme that we are using for this project. So the issue type screen scheme that's associated with the project. And so here we're using a default screen scheme. And if I open that, where do I put that? Default screen scheme is this one here. And so we've got the system default screen available. And if I open that up and configure it, now I can do this as a system administrator. As a project administrator, you can't do this. So if I add in here, we had action item plan and due date would already be in here. Yep, so I already had due date added as a field. What was the other one? Votes.
Votes here.
So votes is not there. It's not there. Why can't I see votes? Okay. So if I now go back to here, I should be able to see that action item one. I might still need to configure it.
Like it,
Yeah.
configure fold, like they will show more fold fields to us.
Yeah. So action item. Action item plan is there under the description. Go to action item plan. There we go. Okay, so there's our action item plan. So it's appearing there now, and due date was over there before, but voting's changed. I think in this new UI they've changed how voting works. So I'll have to find out what's going on there.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So basically, yeah, it looks like it's confusing. Like
there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the issue screen, like under project settings, the issue detail view seems to be a little bit confusing. Like the more you explore, the more you will get. That's what I think right now, because right now you added that configuration from settings, and then we got it on the screen.
Yeah, to me, it's counterintuitive. Like the way that they've got the UI configuration set up under this new UI. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like there's two different configuration areas and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll have a dig around and I'll get to understand it better as well. And in Slack, I'll share what I find if you like.
Yeah, definitely. I will also try to do something like play around it and see what is the difference between that. And
cool.
like I have just like last two questions before we go. So
No
right now we are on this page, like on the screen. So at the right hand side, you can see the status like in progress and like close at the top.
Yeah.
So how we can add, like if you're going to take that in the future sessions, that is fine. I won't, like you can tell it at the time. But if that is a different thing and quickly you can tell, like in my project in the last project that we were working, there were like different, like around 6 or 7 statuses, like ready for testing, in testing, done, complete, like archived. So all these settings were there, like statuses were there.
Yep.
So I was just curious to know how we can add these statuses.
Yeah, for sure. So that's under workflow administration. So if I go into issues, this is system administration now and workflows. And this is where we can administer workflows. So if I go to Meetup Homework, and if I wanted to edit that workflow, this is where you do it. And so at the moment, it's just got that simple workflow to do done in testing and in progress. Yep. So we can configure a new workflow. And there's all sorts of different things that you can do here. So you can have properties for, this arrow is referring to a transition. So we're going from a status, in this case from any status, to a particular status. And that movement from one status to another is called a transition. And so a transition can have properties, you can have triggers for it, you can have conditions, validation that happens upon that transition. You can have post functions, so you can fire events and notifications and all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot in workflow administration. And so I think we'll need to dedicate a whole session on that. So I think probably the Thursday session, when we do the system administration one, I'll give us an overview of system administration like we've done today for project administration. Okay. So the first one, it'll be like a quick workflow walkthrough system administration as a whole, and then future sessions will focus on specific areas of system administration.
Okay. So just to quickly clarify, this status that we are seeing is nothing related to with the columns that we see on the active sprints board, right?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, absolutely it is. So if I change, so if I change that status, let's see. If I'm going to be limited on what I can do because this workflow is actually in progress. But if I change this workflow and add another status to it, then we will see that reflected back on the other one. So if I add status of building, for example, and I allow all statuses to transition to that. Okay. We get up here that we're editing a draft workflow because I've just modified the workflow. So if I publish that draft now, and again, this is the one for the homework space. You get prompted here, do you want to save a backup copy? I'm going to say no, it's okay. Okay. And if I go back to our homework project, I'm going to go to there's a meetup homework. Meetup homework, there it is. Active sprints. Now, we don't see that column appear. Why? You remember when we were configuring columns before?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. We're going to have an unmapped status. Okay, so we've added that status of building, but we haven't yet added a column. So therefore it won't appear. And
Okay.
so now if we add a column, if we call this building, it should automatically assign that status to that column because the names match. Now if I go back to my active sprint, I'll say the building status.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so absolutely, you're on the right track. So through the workflow and adding statuses and things, that's got a direct correlation to what can appear on the board in those columns.
Okay. So yeah, so I got this. So basically my question was a little bit different. So if we go to any card and on the right hand side, there is like to do, in progress, done, or close. So these are the statuses, right?
Yep.
So I just wanted to know how we can add those status, like more statuses without adding any columns to the sprint.
Oh, okay. So now it's dangerous to do that, but let's do it. Okay. So let's say building. Let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that column will no longer appear, but we have a status available of
Okay.
building. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is a bit dangerous because we may have items that will no longer appear on our board.
Okay.
Okay. So you just got to be careful with this because otherwise people say, oh, you know, I've lost my ticket and I can't see it anymore. That's quite often the cause of it. But now let's go and create an item in our backlog. And we're going to say Nikhil's card. And we'll open that one up. Open a new tab. And now our status up here, we've got building. It's showing up there, right? As well as in progress. So now if I go building and I go back to my board, it'll still appear in the backlog here. Actually, it won't because the column's not mapped. So even though it's not yet in a sprint, it still won't appear.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it gets a little bit, you just got to be careful with that. So if I mapped building, to example, for in progress, now if I go back to my backlog, I should see it again, right? So it's there. If I add it to, let's create a sprint, and I'll add that card in, and I'll start my sprint. Just tell me if I'm going a little bit fast here.
I'm just trying to relate. Okay, in progress.
Okay, so now it's showing in progress because I've mapped that status to the column in progress.
Okay, but it's not showing us as building, like the actual status is building.
If I open the card, it will.
Okay.
All right, and you'll be thinking, how's that happening? Okay, so if I go to
No worries. I was just trying to relate those like these two things. Like
yeah. And what you've been doing is perfect because you've been going in and trying things out, and so you're accelerating your understanding because you're trying and practicing things, right? So it's awesome, Nikhil. It's really good. So under in progress, remember we've got these two columns, these two statuses mapped to that column. Now
yes.
I can call this column anything, right? So I can say Nikhil's column. Okay.
Yeah.
Now if I go back to the board, it's now called Nikhil's column.
Yeah.
If I create another item, let's call that second card. And that one won't appear because it's not yet in the sprint. But if I add it to the sprint, it will appear as to do. Now, if I drag that, can you see?
Yeah.
It's giving me two statuses to choose from. So there's in progress, the top one, or there's building. So there are two statuses mapped to that one column. So if I show if I move it to the in progress status, it's there, and the other one's there as well. And the other one, remember, was in a status of building. If I change the layout of these cards, so let's go to card layout, and for active sprints, let's add status. Add that in. When we go back to the board, we can see this one's in a status of building, this one's in a status
Yes,
of progress.
this was what I was looking. Great, thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
This was I was looking for, like, how can I, like, from just the board, how
Yeah.
I can see the status of the card, like building or in progress or
Ah,
something like.
okay. Yeah, no stress.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry, I
so-
wasn't able to explain
No,
it like in a proper way,
No,
but I
that's
was
fine.
just trying
And-
to relate those two things.
Yep.
Yeah,
And so
great,
going
great.
through this, you now can see how to articulate the question, right? Which is
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. I was
Good.
just like, yeah, these terms and terminologies, like, until you don't get used to it, it becomes very hard. What
Yeah,
you
that's
call
right.
that particular thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
And
Great.
that's
Thanks, Paul. Thank you
and
very much.
that's kind of the whole intent of the meetup, is to show people the different concepts and stuff so you can become familiar with it. And if you're working for an organization where you don't have system administration access, through seeing this, you'll know what to ask for.
Exactly.
And you'll know how
that's
to
true.
describe it. And that'll help your system administrators too.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. That's
yeah.
true. Yeah, that's true. And one last question was related to the card reporter. Like, if you
Mhm.
go to any card, and
So
or
go-
like ancient project, if you go to that, or any, like, even this project.
yeah. I'm getting lost with, oh yeah, here we go, ancient project. So if I go
So if
to
you go to active
backlog,
sprints, active
active
sprints,
sprint.
open any card from the active sprints.
Yep.
Yeah. So here, like, okay, now on the right hand side, I'm not able to change the reporter of the card, like, so
Okay, so who can edit the
reporter.
reporter? So if I go to project settings for ancient card, and I'm just going to close out some of these other tabs here for a minute. So if I go to our permission scheme, and I'll do a find for reporter. So modify reporter for this permission scheme, the only people that can change the reporter are administrators
Okay.
or group. So I've got project role, administrators, project role, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I want to edit this permission scheme, and I can do this because I'm a system administrator.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I edit this permission scheme, and I'll go reporter, I can change that, right? So I can say, I want anybody in the permission is modify reporter, and I want anybody in the project role of developers, for example, to be able to change a reporter. Now, if you refresh your screen, so if you try.
So for the ancient project, right? Ancient circle.
Yeah, so let's just paste that in here. Okay, so if you go to this board and now you try to change a reporter. I don't need to save that.
No, it shows me like no options.
Okay, let's try this a different way. So go reporter.
So
Modify
external
reporter.
meetup users is the.
Yeah, so let's give that permission to a group instead. And we'll go external meetup. And the other options here, you could give the permission to the reporter or to the current assignee as well.
Okay.
So we'll try with external meetup first, and that should work. Okay, so now if you refresh your screen.
Yeah, one second. It says.
that working now?
No, it shows me like it is just showing me no options. Like if I try to
Oh,
type.
okay. So it's editable, but you can't see other people to assign it to. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
editable, but I can see like I can't
Okay.
assign it to anyone basically.
Yeah, no worries. So that's another permission. So that's the browse users permission. So I've restricted that because I've
Okay.
got other non-meetup clients in the
Okay.
project.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I set up a specific meetups Jira instance, then I'll open up that permission, and then yeah, we can see different people in there and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Which was this permission you said?
It's
Browse
browse
users.
users.
Okay.
Yeah.
Browse users.
Yeah.
Okay. No
Yeah.
worries.
So have you got your own Jira instance set up now?
No, like I'm just trying with this user, meetup user only.
Yeah, no worries. Did you want to set up your own as well? So you know how you can get the free Jira instance?
Yeah. So I haven't browsed all those all those options right now.
Yep.
But yeah, in the future I will like contact you and try to set up my own Jira instance and try to see a few things. So is
Yeah,
that the way
awesome.
you create a Jira user like in general? Or like as a project administrator, you can create a general like a simple Jira user without registration?
No. So as a with Jira Cloud, you can't create new users like that. They have to have a valid email address, and it's got to be through system administration that you create users. So you actually invite people to the Jira instance, and if somebody is an existing Atlassian user, then you can invite those people. Otherwise, if it's creating a new Atlassian account, then they get the email and they register and all that. So it's it is different on Jira Cloud to Jira Server. In Jira Server, you used to be able to just create a mock user who didn't have an email address and that sort of stuff. So for cloud, it's a bit more rigorous. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think I don't know which one the previous organization was using. Was it like Jira Server or Jira Cloud? But I did not had anything related to Jira previously, and they just took my email address and created a Jira user. That's it. So I was wondering like how a Jira user is being created. Like, is it through the process that you told in the first session, or like is there any permission
Okay.
for the system administrator to just take the email address and first name, last name, and then create a new Jira user? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah, another alternative is integration with SSO. So if people are using Okta or Active Directory, if a company is using those, then it can auto-generate a user through those systems. So if you onboard somebody through Active Directory into your organization, for example, then that can cascade through to being a user added to Jira. So Jira can also, instead of using Atlassian IDs, it can use single sign-on as well.
great,
So that's
great.
probably what happened in that instance.
Great.
Yeah. All right.
I almost done. Like you answered all the queries. Thanks a lot. Thanks a
Hey,
lot for
no
that,
worries.
Paul.
Anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I will just keep trying on few things that you told today in the session.
Yep,
And if I have
perfect.
any queries, I will definitely ping you. Sorry for that. I will bother
No,
you.
not at all. No, that's great. And I'll just stop sharing now. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm really excited actually that you've been going in and having a go with this and trying it out. That's what the meetups are all about, Nikhil. So
Yeah, probably. Yeah, just I would like to like to know more things related to the project, like from the admin point of view, because in the last project I struggled a lot with like in configuring the fields, in setting up the dashboard, because they did not give the permission, admin permission to everyone, and
yeah,
like there was like reporting issues, like we were not able to change the reporters and all those things.
it
So I
makes it
just
so
wanted,
hard, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly. So all the like, even though I used to create cards for different like other people in the group in the project, and those
Yeah.
were not related to like me. So every time they used to change anything, I used to get all those notifications. I told the admin
I
to
might.
change everything.
I'll just
He
stop
said, okay,
recording.
yeah.
So yeah, no worries.